Landscape. The relevant curriculum strands and skills covered by this module are listed here. The first aspect of our local place that we're going to look at are the factors that make up a landscape. Landscape is basically all the visible features of an area of land, so everything that you see from the rocks to the trees, the rivers to the walls and everything in between, and not forgetting the important role that humans play in the landscape.
Landscape is a really good starting point because it's pretty much the foundation for everything else to do with your place. And also it's the most obvious thing that we see. While landscape is the visible elements, we're also going to look at the geology under our feet. Landscapes can be divided into layers, different for different places, from the high mountains and hills to the buildings and vegetation layers, and then down to ground level with soils, visible rocks and maybe fossils. If you want to add another layer, you can go further than the visible landscape layers, down into the geology, underground to caves, underground water and quarries.
A simple survey, perhaps done in pairs or groups, followed by feedback to the class, can be a good starting point to see what the students know and like about where they live. Sample questions are provided in the workbook. The map activity which follows builds on this. Photocopy the relevant section of your local ordnance survey map, or you can find it and print online, although you can lose some of the detail if you do this. Students put a dot on their map to show where they live, and then draw a circle with a 3-kilometre radius around this. You can use a CD, a compass, or make cardboard templates. Using the map and key gets students to list as many different things within a 3-kilometre radius of where they live as they can. These can be buildings, castles, landforms, habitats, etc. Then make a personal map legend to show things that they already knew were there and things that they didn't know were there. This activity can really highlight the richness of the local area, and many people discover sites they'd never been aware of. Having started your landscape investigations, it's good to then take a closer look at the rocks beneath your feet, because they can really have an impact on how the landscape looks. In fact, the main factor determining local landscape is your local rock formations. There are some useful websites for anyone that wants to find out a bit more about your local geology. Great websites for non-geologists include geoschool.com, which takes you through geological time periods, rock formation, the impacts of geology on your life and in the home, and also has a geology map of Ireland where you can find your local rock type. The Geological Survey of Ireland, gsi.ie, has more detailed information if you're building on projects or working with older children, particularly on their Education and Outreach tab. All websites will also be listed in the workbook. If you're just going to look at the basic geology, you'll be looking at rock formation. There are a few different types of rocks and they get put into groups depending on how they are formed.
There are igneous rocks that are formed when volcanoes erupt and the lava flows out and hardens to form rock, or is intruded into other rocks.
Then there are sedimentary rocks. These are formed from layers of materials being compressed over time to form rocks. And then the last type are the metamorphic rocks, which are formed when rocks which were previously formed are changed through something squeezing them or pushing on them or extreme temperatures. After you've had a look at your local geology, you can move on to the formation of local landforms, how the landscape you're used to looking at came to look like that. Again, the Geological Survey of Ireland website will be a good resource for local information. Landforms in Ireland were influenced hugely by the Ice Ages. There are plenty of Ice Age activities that you can carry out, making it relevant to your area. There are a few of these listed in the workbook. The timeline activity included in the workbook gets students thinking about how long it has taken to create their landscape, and could build into an interesting art project, or you could look more closely at some of the time periods. After covering your local geology and landforms, you can then move on to looking directly at what makes up your landscape. So as we said, landscape is the visible features of an area. Landscape defines the self-image of a region, its sense of place that makes it different from other places. The place you live in is unique. There's nowhere else the same in the world. You can get students to come up with all of the elements of their landscape, and then explain which of these are influenced by the local geology. The majority of them will be in some way. The main output from your landscape investigations should be the personal local map for each student. You can add to these with each module you carry out. Some inquiry board questions to get you started. What visual landscape elements can your class identify locally? Can you find out your local rock types? What landscape features are connected to this rock type? Does the rock type have an impact on the lives of the plants, animals, people in the area? How have plants, animals, or people adapted to this? And any particular unique landscape elements in your area.